Hi, good morning. We're reading A Day in the Alpine Tundra. We're on chapter 4 right now. At 9:35 a.m., Johnny thrust his head out of his tent door and looked out over the drop-off of the glacier bowl or amphitheater where the Alpine Tundra was nestled. A raven, his wings spread motionlessly, was riding a spiraling wind up and out of the supine forest, the community of plants and animals below the Alpine Tundra. He circled over the meadow, watching for meadow mice, fledgling birds, and small picas, saw none, and sped to a teetering rock. He alighted there, and it held. Johnny dressed, rolled his sleeping bag up, and sat down and pulled on his mountain boots. He kicked the ground as he rammed his foot into place. A pocket gopher in his tunnel under the tent felt the earthquake. He stopped and listened. He was about the size of a red squirrel, sported almost furless a tail, and had a small golden ears. The gopher's fur was dusty with soil. He had been on his way underground to the fell field when the earth was shaken. He was nervous this morning and irritable. A meadow mouse had dug into one of his storage bins and stolen his seeds and roots. Furthermore, a weasel had entered one of his tunnel entrances, and weasels eat gophers. Johnny put on his other boot and kicked the ground. The gopher plowed like a roto-rooter into another of his tunnels and ran to his bedroom. He curled up in his nest of dry grass. The pocket gopher is a farmer of the Alpine Tundra. He plows up the deep soil and buries seeds in his storage bins, thereby protecting them from the deep freeze of winter, so that they survive to grow in the spring. He aerates the soil with several hundred feet of tunnel and adds minerals to it with his excreta. When he tunnels to the surface, he kicks up a mound of dirt called a gopher esker. On these mounds grow special plants that can only live on disturbed soil. At 9:45 a.m., the pocket gopher peered out of his bedroom door and listened. The earth did not shake again. He ran down the shaft that led under the alpine marsh. With a vigorous kick of his hind feet, he threw up the earth and emerged in a shower of soil. He sniffed and listened. Water chimes were sounding. The underside of a snowfield had begun to melt in the morning sun. The drips pooled, spilled over, and sparkled down the stream bed. They poured into an alpine pond at the edge of the crumholts. The pocket gopher stuffed his cheek pouches with sedge seeds, and drove into his hole and carried them back to his pantry. He emptied his cheeks by pushing his paws over fur-lined pouches. He then turned inside out and cleaned them. Special muscles snapped them back into place. The pantry was too small for any more seeds, and the gopher studied the problem and solved it by digging to enlarge it. He broke into a nest of a water shrew, and a member of the shrew family, the smallest North American mammals. The shrew curled back at the lips and his pointed snout and hissed at the gopher, showing all 30 of his black-tipped teeth. His tiny eyes, which can see only light and dark, twinkled. The gopher backed away from the water shrews because they can bite hard. He sealed the hole and enlarged the pantry in another direction. Irritated by the delays of the morning, the gopher finished his job with a spray of dirt and went back to his underground farm beneath the alpine marsh. He tore bark off runners of the sledge to survive the short growing season that is sometimes too brief for the sedge seeds to set. These plants send out underground runners or rhizomes that sprout new plants. The water shrew was now wide awake. He leaped out of his den and sped like an arrow to the alpine pond and dove in. Encased in a coat of air bubbles, he swam gracefully to the bottom, where he stood on his head and caught a mayfly larvae. After eating voraciously, he surfaced and came ashore. He was not even wet. A weasel lying in the doorway of his den saw the shrew on the pond shore and tightened his muscles to spring. But the shrew had smelled the weasel. With an explosion of energy, he crossed the pond on the top of the water, sported by his swift motion and in part by water tension. Dashing ashore, he dove into the cracks between the rocks in the fell field. The weasel came to the pond edge, reared on his hind legs, looked for the shrew. A bobbing red flower caught attention. At its base, a vole, or a meadow mouse, was eating. The weasel stole toward him, frightening the water pipits feeding in the marsh. They burst like rockets around him, white-tailed feathers flashing, the follow me signal of these birds. They alighted beside a flock of white-throated sparrows who were hunting seeds. The sparrows were restless. Autumn had come to their tundra home. The shortening hours of daylight were changing the hormones in their bodies. They were feeling the urge to migrate down the mountain to the gardens and town lawns of the Wyoming lowlands. The weasel, meadow mouse, held firmly in his teeth, charged the sparrows playfully. They flew up before him, circling the snow bed with chirps and cries. Suddenly flew over the Krumholtz and down to the mountain. At 10 a.m. on August 16th, their migration had begun. That's interesting. Okay, well, we're all done there. I want you guys to keep on working hard. And remember, listen to your parents. And as always, keep on reading. It won't hurt you.